Hello, viewers of our Stop the Destruction of the World program. We have been speaking lately in our program about the big risk of vaccines. These vaccines that are against the swine flu, as well as its possible treatment with pharmaceutical products such as Tamiflu and others, but mainly Tamiflu. And we've been commenting not only about the use of vaccines itself, but of its counterproduction, because these vaccines were not duly tested. Their efficiency was not proven, and its hazards are highly pointed out by many scientists. The authorities' argument is one that prevails amongst the population. The scientist who has little title or fame, but speaks up in a large newspaper from the international media that serves to the interest of the big international companies and the banks, empowering these economic, powerful groups. If a scientist mentions something, the people usually ask, but who is this scientist? Which university does he belong to? Was this news propagated among the big media, like the New York Times? The people don't see an argument. They don't read the subject, paying attention to its content, and using their own discernment, their own inner conscious power of good sense and even intuition to evaluate the matter. Generally speaking, people look and say, but who said that? Is this already being accepted by the mainstream, by the powerful chains of the establishment? We are bringing this information to the population for quite some time already. Fortunately, only a few spectators have sent upsetting emails saying that our program was rendering a useless service. I would like to say to you that recently, Dr. Wolfgang Wodarg, health chief of the European Council in Strasbourg, has brought up this vaccine issue for the swine flu in the human rights sector of the European Parliament, accusing this epidemic outbreak as a farce, a false pandemia. One of the biggest medical scandals of all times, in his words, to benefit the pharmaceutical companies and their huge profits. While countries like the United Kingdom waste their health budgets with millions of people being vaccinated against a disease that is relatively mild. He questions the dangers and risks of these vaccines. I would like to calm the population about the fact that our information until now has been perfectly correct. Dr. Keppe?
The work that I do, I base a lot on the theological element, because my trilogical study, a scientific study, unites theology, philosophy, and science, in order to be able to have a universal vision of the human being. That's why I have published this book. Here, take a look. It's Trilogical Scientific Theology. And it can produce quite an astonishment among those who think that there's no link between science and theology. But science is, so to speak, the grandchild of theology. The greater civilization came from theological elements. This civilization that gave a big impulse to humanity is the more theological. Afterwards came philosophy from ancient Greece. And then came science, as is being developed today. Therefore, people who don't accept the theological question inside science have created an enormous gap in this field, an enormous distance from everything. Therefore, science without theology is not science. Science has to have in its basis theology and philosophy. So you may ask, in what is our work inspired? What is our basic source of inspiration? Let's see in whom we are inspired.
Jesus Christ.
But the vision we have of Christ is not the vision of the church only. Let's see then this next chart that I've written for you.
Christ's conduct. First, as a scientist, physician, and psychotherapist, he cured physical and mainly psychological illnesses.
Whoever knows something about the history of Christianity can notice that, first of all, Christ started to do miraculous things, like transforming water into wine or grape juice or whatever it was, which is a social element, a psychological social element. So he cured sicknesses as though he were a physician. And in fact, many religious individuals use his arguments to cure sicknesses, and with a large rate of success. And why? Because he, Christ, has a correct way of thinking. Being both man and God, he has taught humanity to think in a correct way. And it is this correct way of thinking that brings health. Because what brings sickness is the wrong way of thinking that one has, or his wrong way of feeling, his hatred, envy, jealousy, anger, rancor. This is what leads to sickness. Now, referring back to the chart, as to what I was saying about Christ as a thinker, let's see.
I am the way and the truth and the life.
Considering the field of philosophy, notice that he is the basis of thought, even if one doesn't want to consider him as a philosopher. You see, by his having a universal structure, by being God, as we Christians accept, he is the owner not only of theology, but of science as well as philosophy. Let's see now in third place what I have written of him as a theologian.
He who believes in me believes in the Father who sent me. He who believes in me believes in him, God the Father. This is Christ's trilogy.
So this is the fundamental thought that we use to direct all of our work. And of course, in science, as Claudia said, there are many divergencies. Those scientists who are atheists think that God is not in science. Can you believe that? God created science, and true science, therefore, is linked to the Creator, who is God, who has created the world and also science. Furthermore, the great thinkers and scientists, they were what we can call believers in this question about God. So let's see now another figure who has given a great impetus for humanity, and for our work as well. Let's look who it is.
Mary, the mother of Christ, or the Holy Mother.
Hence, her role in humanity is an exemplification of true feeling, of love, and true thinking, which is the truth, reason, philosophy itself, and perfect action that she had. So she would be an example for all human beings. Now consider well, in the formation of civilization, there was an individual before Christ who had spoken about very similar things as the orientation that had later become Christian. Let's see who he was.
Plato.
And what did Plato say?
He said that the human being's provenience is directly from God.
So notice that long before Christianity, in ancient Greece, they observed questions of theology, therefore taking care of their religiosity. They already had this idea, this perception, that the human being was extremely connected to the divine. And let's see what else he said. Secondly,
knowledge is of an infused character.
he spoke of an intuitive nature, that the person first grasps things by intuition, this type of perception, and afterwards he reasons. Note that humanity didn't stay so much in Platonism and Aristotelianism, which is, let's say, as a secondary transmitter, secondary factor in the knowledge of life, of reality. Because the human being has the truth inside himself. And our work is to conscientize this truth and to once again live this truth within humanity. Let's see what I've written now in third place.
Existence comes from the inner self.
Do you see? This is an idea of Plato's that not only the good existence comes from the inner self, but sicknesses come from within as well. And he wrote this more than 2,000 years ago. Let's see, fourthly.
Goodness is the fundamental aspect of everything. That's why Plato gave it the name of divine.
Note that he didn't place reason as the fundamental element, nor love. Many people even use the word love in a sexual sense, to make love. This is not love. But regarding Plato's point, he put goodness as fundamental, that all human beings look for goodness. So goodness comes before the other elements, much before, because it's connected to behavior. It's connected to the human being's inner energy, which is perfect. Therefore, love, truth, and beauty are already the consequence of this goodness that the human being has to look for. Thus, our work is more based in these three things, in this triad, if I can put it that way, with Plato and also with Christ. We'll be right back.